On 5 News, Britain remembers. Across the country, young and old, those who served and those who still serve, stop to remember the fallen.
If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England.
Also coming up on 5 News, more victims of the Croydon tram crash are named. All 3 were parents.
That's right.
Another night of violent protests in the United States. Donald Trump says they've been orchestrated by the media. 1 year on from France's worst terror attack, 5 News returns to the scene.
We won't be broken by those attacks.
And remembering legendary singer-songwriter Leonard Cohen, who has died at the age of 82. Hello, welcome to 5 News. I'm Matt Barbett. The nation has observed 2 minutes silence to remember our war dead on Armistice Day. It began on the 11th hour of the 11th day on the 11th month, the moment when the guns fell silent at the end of World War I. At war memorials, town squares, railway stations, schools and offices, people young and old paused to reflect. One special commemoration came at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire, where Prince Harry joined veterans to lay a wreath and read a poem. Peter Lane was there.
Led by a prince, a nation paused to remember. The wreath placed by Prince Harry at the National Armed Forces Memorial had a handwritten message for those who have gone before and those who will follow in the future. The last post, the sound of Armistice Day, echoed here and at so many places across the UK, followed by a silence that said so much. And then a poem read by the Prince, written back in 1914, at the beginning of the First World War.
If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England.
1953.
1953's over here.
Every veteran has a story to tell. Back in 1953, Alan Winsper helped rescue a group of airmen from a burning plane, but couldn't get to one of them. Now, decades later, his family have helped him trace the dead man's name, and today, Alan found it, inscribed among the thousands that are listed here. Derek Burtonshaw.
It's been in my mind, and I just got to find the man. Like saying sorry, we didn't do it, we didn't get you out. I feel so awful that we got all the others out and we couldn't get at that man. And he must have suffered.
You did your absolute best.
Yeah, we did our best. We got a commendation from our commanding officer on our quick and prompt action, saving so many lives. But we couldn't get that one man. And that's always played on my life, on my mind.
Some veterans were introduced to the Prince today, Harry taking time to meet, greet and put them at ease.
How old are you now?
98.
98? Oh. I bet you could run the 100 metres faster than me.
And veterans of conflicts past joined service personnel from today's armed forces for an Armistice Day parade, music filling the air after the silence of remembrance. Peter Lane, 5 News.
Well, in Croydon in South London today, the silence of remembrance was held for a bit longer for the victims of Wednesday's tram crash. More of their names are now beginning to emerge, while investigators are looking into claims made on Facebook that a tram almost derailed at the same spot just last week. Dominic Reynolds has the latest.
When the nation stopped to remember, Croydon was silent for a minute longer. Here there were 7 more lives to consider, lost just 2 days ago. The family of 57-year-old Philip Seary said he was a gentle giant, a wonderful son, faithful husband and doting father. Mark Smith was also named today. His family said he will always stay in our hearts and our minds. Dorota Rinkiewicz was a mother of 3 from Poland, and she was full of life, caring and a funny girl, according to a friend. The local MP has been talking to some of the bereaved families, and he told me they're struggling to understand what happened on Wednesday morning.
So, I think at this point, the main emotion is just one of grief, trying very hard to come to terms with how it can be that someone you say goodbye to in the morning goes off to work and doesn't come home at the end of the day.
This morning, the tram carriages were still in the place beyond the tracks that they came to rest. But today, the major operation began to remove them and to reopen this line. We're told that the carriages are now upright again, but the challenge the recovery operation is facing now is getting those carriages back onto the tracks so that they can be transported here to where a crane can lift them up to be taken away. But British Transport Police are investigating claims on social media that there was a close call a week beforehand on this very same bend. In a Facebook post dated last Monday, one man said, "I swear the tram lifted onto one side. Everyone is still shaking." The stream of people leaving Flowers was steady. On a day we think of those who gave their lives in battle, this community is still stunned that 7 lives were taken on the way to work. Dominic Reynolds, 5.
Dom's still at the scene in Croydon for us this evening. Dom, what's the latest on that recovery there?
Matt, they are hoping still to have this complete by the end of the day, but there has been some delay, and I'm told that's down to the need to strike a balance. On one hand, the need to reopen this road, reopen this important tram link in suburban London, but on the other hand, pressure from investigators to have the time they need to be meticulous, to be detailed, to gather every potential piece of evidence that might tell them how or why this happened with such terrible loss of life.
Dom, many thanks indeed. Police investigating a claim by a schoolgirl in Oxford that she was snatched off the street and raped have ruled out that she was abducted. The 14-year-old had told investigators in September she was taken away and attacked whilst walking to school. Police say the evidence indicates the abduction didn't take place, but they are still looking into allegations of rape. Brexit has left Britain's construction industry at its weakest level for 4 years. New figures show its output dropped dramatically in the 3 months after the referendum. Analysts say it's because the falling value of the pound has sent costs soaring. Now, in the run-up to the US election, Donald Trump caused plenty of controversy with his outbursts on social media. Well, just a day into his new role as president-elect, that same old Donald appears to be back. He took to Twitter to criticise protesters who'd held a second night of demonstrations against his victory across the country. Within hours, though, the displeasure was replaced by diplomacy. Catherine Jones has the story.
A second night of street protest in cities across America, from New York to Los Angeles, Philadelphia to Denver. Many demonstrations were peaceful and smaller than the night before.
Moving south on 4th.
Though in Portland, Oregon, the police declared a riot, moved in force and made arrests. Those hoping Donald Trump would now adopt a more statesman-like approach may be disappointed by his response. Just had a very open and successful presidential election, he tweeted. Now professional protesters incited by the media are protesting. Very unfair. Though within hours, an abrupt change of tone. Love the fact that small groups of protesters last night have passion for our great country, he said. We will all come together and be proud.
And this tweet reinforces that while he has shifted, the world around him has shifted, and he is now on the brink of becoming the most powerful person in the world, but he is still the same Donald Trump who gets mad at individual protesters down in the street and then tells lies about why they're there.
But Mr. Trump has had a change of heart about the man he once called the worst president, the founder of ISIS, unfit for office.
Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future.
And at the end of their awkward photo call, another compliment.
Very good man. Thank you, very good man.
In fact, an awful lot of people are having to eat their words. Here's leading Republican Paul Ryan in May.
Look, it's no secret that Donald Trump and I have had our differences.
And now.
Let me just say how excited we are about these opportunities for the country.
Even our own Foreign Secretary is at it. This was him last year.
I think he's betraying a quite stupefying ignorance that makes him, frankly, unfit to hold the office of president.
And yesterday.
I think it's time we snapped out of the general doom and gloom about the result of this election and the collective windjarama that seems to be going on in some places.
Donald Trump has 10 weeks to learn to curb his tendency to lash out at enemies. But despite the supportive comments of politicians at home and abroad, the public anger at his victory is unlikely to go away. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
Still to come on 5 News. 1 year on from France's worst terror attack, have the wounds in Paris healed?
The people of Paris said the attacks wouldn't change their way of life. Well, 1 year on, I'm reporting from the city to see if that's been possible.
It's 4 in the morning.
And singer, songwriter, poet, the genius that was Leonard Cohen. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News. On a Friday evening, almost exactly a year ago, people across Paris were enjoying a night out. They were at a concert, a football match, in a cafe or a bar. It was a typical scene. But the events of the 13th of November 2015 would go down as some of the darkest in recent times. Terrorists, directed by so-called Islamic State, launched 6 simultaneous attacks on the French capital, murdering 130 people and injuring hundreds more. The biggest loss of life came at the Bataclan Theatre, where 89 music fans were killed. 26 countries counted their citizens amongst those victims. Another place targeted that night was a cafe, à la Bonne Bière, where 5 people were murdered. As the anniversary of the attacks approaches, Simon Weiger has visited the cafe to speak to one survivor about how he and his country are now recovering.
1 year on, and Paris prepares for another Friday night.
It's already far away, but also still very close. I have been surrounded by many angels.
Claude Emmanuel Triomphe is lucky to be alive. He was shot in the leg and the stomach. This is him meeting French President François Hollande, who gave him an award for his reconciliation work. Claude told me the past year has been challenging, but not impossible.
I never had any nightmares, never, because I have no pictures, I have only sounds, And no, I do not wake up at night, no, not at all.
Multiple coordinated attacks were caught on mobile phones and CCTV. It was, said the president, an act of war. The attacks a year ago, of course, weren't the first on Paris in 2015. At the start of the year, at the offices of the magazine Charlie Hebdo, the attack there was an attack on free speech. At the end of the year, on bars, restaurants, a concert venue, a sports stadium, well, that was an attack on everyone, an attack on the French way of life. La Bonne Bière was one of the bars. Its manager and staff are trying to move on with their lives and don't want to show their faces on TV anymore. But in an exclusive interview, the owner did want to say this.
The most important for us is the solidarity with customer and with the personnel. Lots of customers come back, so it was very important, and so we have a beautiful team, so it was important for us.
89 people died at the Bataclan. It reopens tomorrow with a concert by Sting. It's the last piece of normalization.
Cafes are packed, concert halls are packed, people go back to a normal life, even if they know in some corner of their head that it might come back, that it will probably come back one way or another. But it's not stopped anyone, and I don't know anyone in my surroundings who has changed his way of life.
And as I reported in the days after the attacks, there is a defiance to carry on as normal. You're optimistic for Paris and...
Yes, of course. I think that the French society, has shown that we won't be broken by those attacks.
A defiance that nothing will change. But this weekend, they will remember the night everything changed. Simon Weiger, 5 News, Paris.
The Royal Navy has intercepted a speedboat carrying tens of millions of pounds worth of cocaine in the Caribbean. A ship from the Royal Fleet Auxiliary was called into action after a patrol plane spotted the suspicious vessel. After a 6-hour chase, this was the moment a sniper on board a Royal Navy helicopter took out the boat's engines. And a study has found that the Beagle 2 mission to Mars in 2003 was excruciatingly close to success. The probe was thought to have crash-landed on the Martian surface, but analysis indicates the landing went to plan. It may even have worked for several months, but couldn't send the data back to Earth. England and Scotland's footballers are preparing for their first competitive clash since 1999. The two teams have been pitted together in the same World Cup qualifying group, and only one team can make it through. Layla Hayes is at Wembley now, where the match kicks off in just a couple of hours' time. Layla, it is simply a huge game for both sides.
Hi, Matt. Yes, this is one of the fiercest rivalries in football. England v Scotland. And, of course, the first time that both teams have played competitively to each other in 17 years. Now, they may be rivals, but they are united on one thing. Both teams will be wearing armbands tonight with poppies on, in spite of the threat of sanctions by FIFA. But of course, this is a crucial game. It's a World Cup qualifier. 90,000 fans are expected here this evening, including at least 14,000 Scottish fans. I've already seen them starting to arrive. But you know what, Matt? I'm half Scottish, half English. I'm staying neutral on this one.
Layla predicts a draw. Thanks, Layla. Finally, he wrote songs that were as haunting as they were heartfelt, each word steeped with feeling and meaning. And today, the world has been remembering the Canadian singer, songwriter and poet Leonard Cohen, who has died at the age of 82. Minnie Stevenson has been looking back at his career.
Hallelujah,
A poet, a singer, a voice which rang with emotion, love, loss and despair. Leonard Cohen wrote about it all. That's why they called him the Godfather of Gloom.
and it's a very broken hallelujah.
Struggling to find just the right words, Cohen later admitted Hallelujah took him 5 years to make, from cult listening to what critics now call pop's most sacred text. The song would go on to be covered over 300 times. Today, Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, led the tributes for the singer born in Montreal. His ability to conjure the vast array of human emotion made him one of the most influential and enduring musicians ever.
It's time that we began to laugh and cry.
As two members of Cohen's most recent band told 5 News, his talent could not be matched.
Leonard had a poise and grace in the way that he communicated with people, not just in his music and his eloquence in his writing, but also just in terms of the way he communicated with people face to face. He treated everybody with such kindness, and everybody was equal in the way that he communicated, and I shall never forget that about him.
Like a bird on the wire.
Songs like Bird on the Wire meant that you could find fans of Cohen's in over 5 different decades. Right until the end, when he learnt his former love and the woman who inspired this song, Marianne Jensen, was dying this year, he wrote her one final letter. Well, Marianne, I think I will follow you very soon. Know that I am so close behind you that if you stretch out your hand, I think you can reach mine. Just weeks ago, Cohen released what would be his last album. As the singer declared in his final interview, I am ready to die. That's about it from me.
Hallelujah.
The unique voice and talent of Leonard Cohen. That's it for me for the time being. I'll be back, though, at 6:30 with 5 News Tonight. We'll be discussing Leonard Cohen's legacy with music journalist Andrew Muller. I'll also be chatting to 2 Iraq War veterans. Warren Ward and Simon Brown were both wounded in Basra and will march together at the Cenotaph for the first time on Sunday. I'll be talking to them about the importance of remembrance, especially since they lost comrades of their own. I'll also be discussing the role of women in the White House after her meeting with Michelle Obama. What kind of First Lady will Melania Trump be? Hillary Clinton knows all about that, of course. Chris Page has the weather next. I'll see you again at 6:30 for 5 News Tonight. For now, thanks for watching. Do have a good weekend. Bye-bye.